Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that loves victories in lonely Bill Leckie weather. This week on Heart and Hand, Jones, Jack, Jermaine, just perfect. So welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I'm your host as always. And joining me this week are, first of all, a very experienced campaigner, Mr. Cameron James Bell.
David, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, Cammy. I dare say that someone working in the East Coast, such as yourself, is probably a little bit better than me today, right enough?
Well, it does seem that very many of my Hibs acquaintances have decided not to come near me to talk about the match.
Off the grid, so to speak.
Correct.
Understandably. And joining us today, making his debut on the flagship, but a regular on our Patreon site, is Ulster's finest himself, Mr. David Graham. Hello, David. Welcome to the big show.
Good afternoon, Overlord. Good afternoon, Cameron. How are we all?
We're not bad, considering what looked like a tricky fixture on Thursday night was put to bed rather spectacularly, and then Rangers continued it with a 6-1 demolition of Hibs at Ibrox yesterday. Cammy, this is the Rangers that we, Steven Gerrard, everyone wants to see. It was fluid. Some of the football was genuinely outstanding, the passages of play, and it was a spanking.
It was, and many times on previous pods, one of the key words I wanted this Rangers team to exude was a degree of ruthlessness, and that for me is what we've seen. And obviously we'll go into the game in some detail, etc. But we did not drop a gear, other than maybe for a quick 10-minute spell. But our attitude was absolutely top notch on both last Thursday, even more so on Sunday as well. And again, as I'm sure we'll come on to, it's great to see that through the squad. You're not talking about the same 11 that played in both games, therefore had the same mentality. You're starting to see that now reverberate around players who will come in and take their chances.
I think that was probably a key thing for me, David, that really made me happy yesterday was we did make changes and didn't miss a beat from Thursday night. Obviously, you still need your core players, but when you're bringing in, it's so different when you're bringing in guys like Defoe, Stephen Davis into the side, Ojo, that you're not having a massive step down in quality, which is remarkable when you think that you can put Alfredo Morelos on the bench and still say that.
Well, I think it's only, let's be honest, it's only a few months ago where we had that debacle in Hampden where, you know, we basically didn't have a striker, and then we threw on the now infamous Umar Sadiq. And I think now, obviously, there has been progression, albeit slow, since, you know, we returned under Mark Warburton. And you can now clearly see that, you know, gone from the days of our first choice 11, none of our first choice 11, even, you know, 2 seasons ago, bar Tav, obviously would get in our squad. So it shows you two things, that we have a strong starting 11, but even more importantly, we actually have a strong second 11. Now, none of us are getting carried away, but even when they went drew a goal back, we all were sensing, and all the guys I was around were saying, look, Gerrard will give them a rollicking at half time and we'll come out. Whilst, you know, even a year ago, certainly 18 months ago, if we were going in at half time 2-1 up against the like of Hibs, we probably, in all honesty, were fearing that either they'd nick a goal and it would go 2-2, or even worse, we would totally capitulate. So look, there's a lot of things that we should be very proud of. It's 2 games in, we're not get carried away, but it's been a bloody good start.
It really has, and I think the manner of the victories, Cameron, because not only, you know, Hibs were a team that I thought were due a cuffing off us, because there were at least 2 fixtures last year where I thought, I can't believe we haven't won that game, and won it by plenty. But then Kilmarnock sitting in, and we flipped the script as we talked about last week on the show. It's good to be overcoming challenges that, as David says, previously we just couldn't.
Well, speaking of what David says, I think the only thing that's going to be wetter than the pitch from Ibrox on Sunday will be the girls listening to David's wonderful accent, because, you know...
Not just really the girls, Cammy. Not just the girls.
He's putting us all at a disservice. I mean, Jesus, you could listen to the guy read the phone book.
Yeah, that's why I got you on rather than Martin.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? You know,
Oh,
I'd have sounded shabbier than Michael Stewart's opinions if I'd brought those two on. So
don't be so hard on yourself, David. Now, come on.
well, I'm the best of all worlds, David, because I've got the whole Northern Irish thing in me, but I don't have your kind of mental religiosity. So it's a bit of best. Although it's
the best of British, you'd even say.
Yes,
exactly.
People have long said, what we need is some hardcore Protestants on the show because we've only got soft types like me and Cammy. So we've brought David into the fray. But no, all joking aside, it was just splendid, Cammy. And it is about, right, that was a challenge for us last year. Now we can go on and overcome them. And David touched on that nervousness that went around the stadium at 2-1. That is us, because I watched the game back and had to create one chance at 2-1. And if it goes in, who knows? I still think we win the game because the players are better than their players. And I think, though, that you have to overcome these challenges in order to relax the fans, because it's just because we've been kicked in the nuts so often that we assume a kick in the nuts is coming. The only way to restore that, if you like, trust and belief is overcoming the challenges. And the more it happens, then the more the fans will relax and go, don't worry about it. We're going to, we'll go on and win. We always do, which was kind of what we had in the 90s.
I was going to say, it goes back to some of those awesome 9-in-a-row teams where even if you decided to give the opposition a 1-goal head start, you knew you were going to win the game regardless. The confidence is definitely starting. I'm not going to say coming back because this team hasn't had it. David obviously just touched on the transition of the team that's come up under Warburton and the progression of that, and obviously the people who are still involved within the squad from back in that period. But there's a greater belief amongst our squad and management to say that even if we do suffer a wobble, such as that kind of 10 minutes, although obviously some media outlets would have you believe that we wobbled throughout the entire game, that you'll still overcome. You'll still be able to get there. For last season, so many times, the second goal for us was absolutely critical. And I'm glad to see, obviously, how quickly we've been able to get to that on Sunday. And it took a sublime piece of skill. Let's not mask it.
Oh, yeah,
a sublime piece of skill to unlock that midfield and defence and then take it for there. But that, for me, you could count in one hand the amount of times that Alan McGregor was legitimately troubled. And that's a solidity, that's a confidence, a little bit of swagger, although I did notice that in the manager's post-match, he was very quick to acknowledge and actually applaud Hibs for coming out and having a go and being able to try and I wonder if that's maybe a little bit of a, you were able to damage us last season. This season, it won't be the same thing any longer.
Yeah, I can't. Look, I understand what he's doing there, but this is why I can't have a go at a Kilmarnock or an Aberdeen even. It would get football stopped, but if they're going to get hammered 6-1 if they come and go toe-to-toe, I can't understand why they don't. If I was a fan of those clubs, then if my manager went out there, played expansively, and we got absolutely taken apart, I would be kind of upset with them. And you can understand why they do that if that's what's going to happen to them.
Do you not think, though, Davey, that maybe there's a sense of maybe an expectation from Hibs that, if they had a go at us, we could be got at? And I think that, we proved last season, and I don't like that this isn't obviously the tactics pod, but if you haven't signed up, it's $1.99 a month. Sorry for the free pitch there, but obviously it's not the Adam Thornton tactics pod, but we're talking about the spine of the team. Now, look at the spine a year ago where Joe Worrell, may he rest in peace, along with Ovi Ejaria. Now, you knew as soon as any sense of pressure, either physically or mentally, went on those guys, they would crumble. And you knew that as soon as there was a wobble, that we were in real big trouble. Kilmarnock away at the start of this calendar year proves it. Whilst I think now, yesterday proved that Hibs probably didn't think we would be just as ruthless and relentless as we were. And I suspect there's a lot of teams, you're rightly saying, Davey, going, bloody hell, we're glad we weren't the first team of the season to go out and sort of test the water with Rangers, because, as I say, we'll just go for park the bus time at Ibrox.
Well, the thing is I think it plays into this mentality because our good friend Mark at Follow, he sent me some stuff from the Hibs supporters board, and there was a genuine, after the match, they were genuinely surprised by how good Rangers were, and they were saying, Rangers are actually a really good team. And I think it's because of this mentality that does come from the press. And I know some people might think that we go on about this, but I do believe it to be factually true. That, Rangers, who do they think they are for even daring to assume they can challenge the mighty Celtic? And I think that for so long, teams have, I think correctly, assumed that we were part of the pack rather than going for a title, which, we might not win it, but we're definitely aiming for that. Whereas I think that they've quite enjoyed. Rangers are in the pack. They're with us. They're with Aberdeen, Kelly, Hearts, Hibs. That's Rangers level currently. And look, while we were competing with them for second and even finishing third, we couldn't really argue with that. I think that there will be a slow realisation that actually, hang on, they are a really good side. And it might take a few drubbings to wake people up to this, because I do believe that they have been conditioned to think that us saying we've got good players is really just us being blowhards or exhibiting hubris, which I don't believe is true. I think Rangers actually do have a good football team. Look, you don't go to Denmark and put 4 goals past a side who don't concede goals unless you can play a bit of football, Cammy.
You don't, but then let's take a breath and just remember that the most surprising result, in all of this, only happened 8 months ago. And that was us being able to beat Celtic in league. Then we should have beaten them at Parkhead. Then we beat them quite roundly at Ibrox. And the good thing with this, and although, yes, obviously, as all Rangers fans were disappointed that we weren't able to capitalise on that opportunity at the start of the year, what it started to do is it's now started to give players the confidence and the mentality to be able to build into that. But we went about our business very quietly. The manager quite obviously, well, I say quite obviously, it's obvious to us in terms of when you see him regularly and you understand exactly what's going on, sees that there's a desire to be able to incrementally improve. And drubbings, as you say, along the way are definitely going to help that. It's not in our best interest to have the media fawn over us, so it's handy for us to have this. So you beat a team for Denmark, so what? And undervalue that win. Now, true Rangers fans and anyone with IQ higher than a glass of water understands the importance of these victories and understands how relevant they are. But what's great with this is that we're doing this without it being the case that the focus isn't back on us and people aren't paying us a lot of attention. And what I think you'll start to find is, and what certainly happened, especially on Sunday, is I think teams will underestimate us. I think teams will think that this is the same team that we played 6 months ago. And it's absolutely not, because we've developed virtually in every area of the pitch. So the greater confidence that gives us, if you want to, as I say, if you want to underestimate us, then you'll do so at your peril, because I want to see us being able to absolutely batter teams. I want results like this. And again, as I say, I know that we'll come on to the breakdown of the game. I want players like Alfredo Morelos' attitude that comes out and says, I don't care if we've won this game comfortably. I'm not here to just simply kick the ball around. I'm here to score more goals. And every Rangers player should have that mentality, no matter how in the bag the game happens to be.
Look,
Sorry, go on, David.
No, just going to say, guys, that the idiots, and of which there are plenty in the Scottish media at the minute, and we'll have, I'm sure, a bit of a laugh about them all later on. They are useful idiots for us at the minute. I mean, I'm convinced that if we win the treble, in fact, if we didn't win it, we won a domestic treble, won the Europa League, remained unbeaten all season, I suspect, Sutton, Stewart, and whatever other journalist in inverted commas is out there would have some excuse as to why we did that. So, but that's good for us, because ultimately at the minute, as you say, if we were starting to be talked up about potential title challengers and saying about Steven Gerrard should be able to win this, should be able to win that would not be good for us, because we all know as fans how high we have expectations of ourselves. So if anyone else actually joined that party, I'm not quite sure, just dampen expectations somewhat, if all members of our squad have got, just the mentality yet to wear the real heaviness of the shirt when the heaviness really comes. So, we are where we are, and I think we're in a very good position, and let's keep moving forward.
David, I'd like you to engage smug mode for a moment, because when Jordan Jones arrived, and don't be fooled by the accent, folks, David is Northern Irish. David said to me, "Look, he's a better player than people are giving him credit for. I think he could be a success." You mentioned that he's got that wee bit of, like, spirit or devilment, whatever you want to call it, cockiness that you need to be a winger at Rangers, because it's a tough gig. And I think this week, with two superb performances, Jordan Jones really opened up a lot of people's eyes as to what he can do. I noticed yesterday, I'm sure you boys did as well, that from about 60 minutes, whenever he got the ball, there was a buzz around the stadium that hasn't been there for a long time with any player, that people were excited when he got the ball, which is a wonderful thing for a winger to have.
He plays in the left wing, but in terms of he reminds me a lot of Keith Gillespie, actually.
He was a good player,
yeah. In terms of that, devilment's a good word actually for him. Like one thing about Gillespie, no matter how many knockbacks he had, either on or off the field, he just seemed to always consistently come back. And I suppose that is the mark of a good winger, where you may have to take on a guy twice before you draw a foul and you get a book, or you might have to take him on, for 60 minutes, 70 minutes. But if you continually take him on, eventually you will get a breakthrough. And that's one thing about Jones, where he just seems to keep coming back and keep coming back. And I suppose if you see, and I don't really want to get into this conversation because it sounds somewhat negative about him, but if you do a bit of research about Jordan Jones, he did have a somewhat difficult career, and in many ways, so far, and in many ways, Kilmarnock was a sort of almost a bit of a redemption for him, and he got himself involved in a few things off the field as well. And I think that really, in a way, it's testament to the lad, and I suppose to quote another adopted Ulster man, Ian Dow, his bounce back ability. And I think that you'll see now that he has proven in many ways to himself that he does have the ability to play at a high level, like ourselves. I think that he'll continue to kick on, and I think he'll be an integral part of our season, both domestically and hopefully in Europe as well.
Can I tell you why I love Jordan Jones? Because if he could, he would play Celtic tomorrow. That's absolutely what I love about him. He is so entrenched in being part of a Rangers team, being part of the club. You can just tell he's living his absolute best.
He gets it, yeah.
He absolutely does. And the best thing about him is he's got that the perseverance that David's obviously mentioned. But I genuinely believe if you could say to him, "Do you want to play Celtic tomorrow?" he would absolutely take you on with it. He would love to do it, and that is exactly what we need.
Yeah, I think it does come down at Ibrox a lot of time to not just ability but attitude, and that's why we've seen arguably more talented players fail and arguably more limited players succeed at Ibrox, because we can debate why, but it's not going to change. It's a hell of an environment to play football, and the pressure is constant. The fans are demanding. You could be 3-0 up, and if you misplace a pass after 60 minutes, you'll know about it. You've got to have the mentality that embraces that. I don't even think can live with it. I think you have to embrace that and be able to channel that and use it and put it into a positive. And certain guys could really effectively. I think that he shows the signs of that. And there will be a dip, and then, we'll need to see how he comes through that, of course. But I'm excited with the possibilities, and I think that people are realising at least why he was signed, because I was worried that it would be a bit of a vicious circle with Jordan Jones, that people said, I don't know why we signed him, and then they would watch him, and if he didn't start well, they would go, see, I knew it, I was right. And once you're judged at Rangers, it's really hard to shift people's opinions of you. Mark Hateley did, not many others. So I think that getting off to this flyer, an apt word for him, I think really does give him the opportunity to now bed in and develop as a player. A guy who's done that, David, over the last couple of seasons is Ryan Jack, who I think in the last two games has been pretty spectacular, in all honesty. Yes, he can retain possession. We knew that. If anything, at times I was maybe critical, because that was, he would lapse into that's all he did, where he would just go back, take the ball off centre backs and give it back. And, it's nice and your pass completion stats are great, but it's not doing anything. None of that the last two games. He is dominating midfields, and in atrocious conditions yesterday. And previously against a really physical side on Thursday, Ryan Jack was dominant.
Yeah, look, I just love Ryan Jack at the minute. I think he just is a great lad, which obviously he demonstrated on his few days break with his wife in the Dorans in Ibiza. Clearly would just be a good lad to have almost as a mate. He's just solid as a bloke, and that is why he has then transferred that, in my view, into his position now in our team. And in many ways, if you think about it, when he was at Aberdeen and he captained Aberdeen, and he was a right pain in the arse when he played against us, but he was doing for McInnes what McInnes wanted him to do, which was in many ways limited, basically because of McInnes's own limitations as a manager. But if you see now, Ryan Jack has proven his ability, where he has now been able to adapt to playing under someone like Steven Gerrard, who obviously was one of the best players in Ryan Jack's position or a similar position when he played. So if you see now guys who were here when Gerrard arrived, who are no longer here for various reasons, it's because they haven't been able to adapt in to what Gerrard expected of them. And in many ways, and maybe in a slightly different context, Ovie Ejaria was probably almost an example of that, because if you had said this day last year, who would kick on under Steven Gerrard, Ovie Ejaria or Ryan Jack, you probably would have said Ovie Ejaria, wouldn't you? But Ryan Jack has just proven that he's solid as a rock, and I am delighted that he's kicking on and proving his ability.
The gaffer said as much after the match, Cammy, where he was at pains to suggest Ryan Jack is a guy he trusts and a first name on the team sheet type player, because of exactly what David said, that he gets it, he gets what he wants him to do, and he's hungry, he's got that desire. And I think that you're seeing that because he isn't just doing something I'm critical of Scottish players for a lot, and not just at Rangers, but I think that they get to kind of 23, 24 and they go, well, I'm as good as I'm going to be. The skills that have brought me here are fine, and they don't add layers to their game. Well, he is, because we knew he was a decent defensive midfielder. Now he's a really good defensive midfielder. But on top of that, he's now adding forward passes, quick passes, and he's becoming a much more rounded player.
Yeah, he's developing brilliantly. I always have a little bit of a soft spot for Ryan Jack, and I suppose it's really around. He does a lot of the difficult work, and he does a lot of the necessary construction that team requires, so that when you do have 6-1 wins, or if you're winning away in Europe or whatever, he'll do a lot of the legwork. He'll do a lot of the labour that's required in order to be able to see the other players get the goals, been able to try and move the team forward, been able to try and listen, do you know what? Sometimes that laborious role is really difficult to acknowledge. It's really difficult to pick out. It's not all singing, all dancing. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles on with it. Fortunately, the manager, and this is maybe a little bit the midfielders club, but the manager acknowledges that. And I think that's the most important thing, and he certainly does. I mean, again, he said in his presser after the game that if taking away Jermaine's goals, he would have given it to Ryan Jack as man of the match, because he saw the amount of work that he had to put into it. I also believe that he allows that the players playing alongside him to have a degree of freedom, a little bit more expression in terms of being able to get with the ball. Obviously, you saw what Davis was capable of on Sunday. We know Aribo can score goals as well from being able to get further forward with the park. And Ryan Jack will happily go about his business and being able to try and do that. So, yeah, he absolutely should get a lot of the credit for that. And I'm glad to see that people are now starting to see, and again, especially, insight, especially from guys like David, etc., that we're starting to see that development. We're starting to see what we've really got from him. He's playing now without a limitation that was given to him at Aberdeen. Aberdeen was very much compartmentalised within that midfield. It was stay in there, do your job. That's it. Don't breach the limits. And there's every likelihood, and I don't think it's outside the realms of imagination, that he has went to Gerrard, or Gerrard has went to him and said, I want to grow, I want to develop, I want to add more skills to my game. Where can you see that? And that's what he's worked on, and that's what he's delivering. So absolutely correct. You're not this 24, 25-year-old player who said, right, that's me now. I'm at my peak. This is me going to be able to deliver it. No, he still wants to continue to look at his other attributes and how to be able to try and enhance them.
Other guys to pick out from yesterday, David. I mean, the obvious one is Jermaine Defoe, because that was a terrific performance. Not only the goals, which were excellent finishes, but I thought that up against that Hibs back four, in a different way to what Alfie does, he didn't give them a moment's peace. He worked very hard. He closed down. He's maybe I had picked up the wrong idea that Jermaine Defoe was just a finisher. He's not. There's clearly a lot more to his game than that.
I think, and I don't mean this as a disrespect to the players that he has around him now, but I think a lot of the time, because Defoe had never really nailed on as like a starter for England, say, and all the clubs he played for, he obviously played for high quality clubs, but he never went to the kind of, I suppose, Spurs was as high as he had gone in terms of, maybe at the time when he was at his peak sort of would have been maybe United or Chelsea. And I suppose because of him being that level of top quality Premiership player without being a real outstanding, we probably didn't realise how effective he was because of the quality around him. So therefore some of the good work that he did went unnoticed because you only saw him banging in goals. And I don't mean it as a disrespect, because he banged in a hell of a lot of goals. But I suspect now when we're seeing him and we're watching him every week, we're like, flip, he actually is a lot more than just a poacher who, although his first goal was a poacher's goal yesterday, he actually has so much more in his locker. And I think, obviously having lived in the northeast of England for a while, speaking to a few of my mates who are Sunderland fans, they were saying, oh yeah, like they actually went through virtually the same experience that I've just talked about there, where they thought this guy will come and he sort of poach a few goals, whilst actually there was so much more to his game. It was quite interesting that I knew this, but it was only dawned on me now. He actually played more on the right side of the three, where it was Danny Graham was kind of the head of that arrow. So I don't know if Alfie likes playing with anyone else because he doesn't really like passing the ball, but I would like to see if that would work, and I would be keen to hear your views on that as an option.
I did think that might be something that we'd explore when he arrived, because he'd done it so well at Sunderland. In that, if you want that kind of A2 position at Barcelona, where you have a striker but you play him wider, I did think that was a possibility. But clearly, it's not something the manager wants to do, because he's been here long enough now that we would have seen it, and we haven't really seen it. They don't work as a two. I don't think Alfie works particularly well with anyone in a two. I don't think that's his game. I don't think he enjoys it. So I don't know why the manager doesn't want to try it, but there's clearly a reason for it. Cammy, speaking of Alfredo, he had a game in 20 minutes this week where he was phenomenal.
Absolutely. And I'd like to probably go on record as saying that, given we have now seen the window shut this week, in England, sorry, right, okay, I beg your pardon. In England, his preferred choice of destination. I don't think it's unfair for me to say that I'm not alone. That several of us were very concerned about his attitude and what would have happened if a move didn't materialise. And my God, is he proving us wrong? Now, I know the manager alluded to that after the game in Denmark, but Sunday was really a true test of that. And you just saw straight away how direct he was. And I think probably just to touch on the point that you two guys talked about there, just really briefly, Alfredo Morelos and Jermaine Defoe are very good at what they do. Jermaine Defoe is incredibly subtle at it. Alfredo Morelos is very physical at it. And what I mean by that is a general disruption of a back four defence. Jermaine Defoe will glide out of position and will take players with him, and he'll either capitalise on that himself or he'll create space for others to be able to do it. Alfredo Morelos will terrorise defenders. He will move them physically out the way if he absolutely has to, but he'll constantly run it up and he'll just be an absolute pest. The two of them are very subtle weapons in their own rights, but it's just a little bit more obvious, I think, in the Morelos case. To come back to Alfie in terms of where that is, so I owe him an apology because I was pissed off with him after him getting sent off at Parkhead. I'm really starting to come back on board with him now. I think he has got a far better developed attitude. Touch wood, and please don't let it be temporary. I start to see a bit more maturity in how he reacts, because he got a few hefty challenges in Denmark. And in the build-up to his first goal on Sunday, he was actually clipped. I don't know if you guys had a chance to rewatch it and actually notice that, but he was actually clipped and kept going. And I think that there's probably been times where he's maybe taken a bit of a touch and then he's went over. But no, he was just so determined to run forward with the ball that he kept going with that. And that's what I'm loving about him at the moment, is just being able to see that. Now, he needs to make sure that's kept in check. He can't react. He can't get himself involved in nonsense. And hopefully he doesn't, bite as often as he did last time. He will be provoked. I've no doubt whatsoever that managers will try to take advantage of that. But already so far this season, you can just see him, delivering so much for the team. And I think what's great about Defoe's attitude was Defoe was panicking that he was going to get a hat-trick. So all of a sudden they'd have to cut the match ball in two. So I think that they've got, bizarrely as this sounds, I think they've actually got quite a good understanding and quite a good partnership on who's going to play and who's not. And there's never dummies been spat out as a result of it.
Must be a hell of a thing to be 3-1 down, and the guy who's just had a hat-trick against you's getting taken off, and you think, oh, thank God, he's given us a hell of a day. And you look up and Alfredo Morelos is standing there with that look in his eyes that says, drop me, would you? And he comes on and just batters you and gets two wonderful goals. Shea Ojo completed the scoring, David, and had assists for the first two. And I noticed at Ibrox a wee bit of grumbles about him yesterday that, he doesn't work hard enough or whatever, he's not in the game all the time. But this is something we lacked last year. I know that a lot of people were upset when Daniel Candeias left, for example, but I think the gaffer might have traded in work rate for moments, for game-changing moments. He did point out with Daniel Candeias before he left that he got a handful of assists and a few goals, but I needed double figures in both from my wide players. And you can't really argue with the result. Shea Ojo in the first half sets up the first two goals. He's pivotal in that. He gets one at the end. Okay, it's 6-1, doesn't really matter at that point. But still, as Cammy said earlier, it's great to see that Rangers are keeping the foot in the throat right to the end. And it made me think about, Daniel Candeias, you'll get a shift. He did very well for Rangers. He was a good signing, and I wish him nothing but the best in Turkey. Always be welcome back in Govan. But it may just be a different type of player that people will have to get used to.
Well, I suppose I don't. It's very easy to compare players, particularly when they come from the same squad. They're on loans and they're similar. But I suppose if you compare Ojo's performance yesterday in comparison to, and I can't think of one off the top of my head, and perhaps one of the listeners can cite one in the comment section, but how Ryan Kent was playing, at the start of this season, the season last year at this time of year. And I suppose if you consider Ojo's performance then, when you compare it to sort of the average Daniel Candeias performance, it was much, much better. And I suppose to refer back to the transfer pod that we had sort of a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago now, where we were actually saying, look, if you're to rank all your players from virtually keep them at all costs down to, look, are they dispensable? I suppose in hindsight, DC was dispensable. He was a great player, a great lad, great work rate, and a solid player. But if we are to progress, if we are to kick on, I think what we've seen a glimpse of Ojo so far, in comparison to having seen a couple of seasons worth of Candeias, if you were to say which player will increase the likelihood of 55, I'll take a punt now and say Ojo. Now, look, he may go home crying his lamps out the way Ajaria did after a couple of poor performances. But look, I think so far so good. And actually, I'll go far to say it, so far as good as Ryan Kent was at that time of the year, if that makes sense. So don't all jump on me and say, you say he's better than Kent. I'm saying right here, right now, I think we're content with what we've got, or very happy with what we've got, I should say.
Yep, I'd agree with that. I think he's shaping up well. It's maybe just, as I say, about us tempering our expectations. Now, boys, at the game yesterday, it was very, very wet indeed. And it got me thinking about the wettest matches you've ever been at. and memorable ones for good or for bad reason. I've got two that I'll start us off with. And the first one for me was a bad one, which was against Celtic in 2005 at Parkhead in the League Cup when Rangers lost 2-0. You may remember it as the night Stefan Klos came back into the side and made an error for their second goal. Celtic were miles better than us that night. We couldn't get near them. We never looked like winning. We went out into the rain afterwards, made to walk miles by the stewards as they make you do at Parkhead, to find that our car tyres had been slashed and we had to change the tyre in the pissing rain. So that was one. Got home soaked, covered in dirt and oil and shit. The other one was a much more pleasant soaking, and that was the Scottish Cup semi-final in 1992 at Hampden. Jesus, it was wet that night, even though it was April, I think. March it might have been actually, and Rangers that night of course went down to 10 men after just 5 minutes, and you're thinking, oh Christ, here we go. David Robertson disgracefully sent off by Andrew Waddle. God, I hated that bastard. But with a magnificent performance of sheer testicular fortitude, Rangers went on to win. Ali McCoy scored that memorable goal from the pass from Stuart McCall, and what a night it was for the Bears. Cammy?
Well, my one isn't as glamorous as going to go and watch the Rangers. David, you may remember a good wee while ago I used to do data analysis for games on a Saturday 3:00, etc. So it used to be for scouting and also for doing data, and it was grand when you were in a nice stadium on a 3:00. Not much of a problem. But one game I got assigned to in particular was the glamorous tie of, I think it was Clyde versus Airdrie under 21s, and I got given my kind of profile to go through, and it was through at the Clyde Stadium. Now the Clyde Stadium, just for anyone who hasn't been, is fundamentally a community stadium. It leases itself out, as a lot of stadiums do now, for rental. But there was like kids clubs on, so by the time I get there, I'm expecting a game, but no, all these kids games are still going on. So I asked somebody involved at the club, it must have been an official or something, and he said, yeah, it's been moved to the AstroTurf Park outside. Now this was a small problem because there was also a big massive flood in the run up to the stadium, so you can get an idea of how much downpour there'd already been at this point. And I kind of thought, well, I'll get away with it because I'll be sitting in a stand, that won't be an issue. No. Because the game had been moved to accommodate the kiddies, the under-21 game was then held outside in a open AstroTurf Park with no cover whatsoever. And if the rain was bad to begin with, it just got worse and worse. Everybody, to a man, just assumed that the referee was going to call it off. And obviously he was wanting his money that week, so he kept it going. So to give you an idea of what it was like, the rain was virtually sideways. The computer, the little PDA thing that I use in order to be able to kind of capture all the information, gave up the ghost because it was so wet. So I then had to start using my headphones and my phone so that an analyst could phone me and I could verbally describe what was happening. So now people are walking by me wondering why this guy is just talking to himself. Like some massive weirdo like that. Throw in for team one. Corner for team one. Like, people don't understand what it is that's going on. And just to make things even better, the perimeter fencing, so it's waist-high fencing that's kind of around the AstroTurf Park, is maybe, I don't know, 5 foot away from the edge of the pitch. This guy, this centre-half, now, the other thing is, right, although we're moaning about the weather, anyone who's my age who, remembers how to, play when slide tackling was still involved in the game, loves weather like this because you do some awesome slide tackling. Well, this centre-half decided to do that. And as per usual, the centre-half is trying to take out this nifty wee sand-dancing winger who's built like the side of a fiver, a pure whippet. And by the time that your man is already engaged in the slide tackle, this lad is off and away. And the defender actually slid not only off the park, but through a gate in the fencing and onto the path leading up to the park itself. He could not have aimed it any better if he tried. But obviously, he didn't even realise what was going on. But that's what you love, is these, 20 feet sliding, challenges that you can try and get away with. Obviously, everyone's laughing at that. Now, I burst out laughing, and the guy who was based in Switzerland, I might add, was like, "Why are you laughing? What is going on in the game?" And I'm like, "Oh, the centre half slid out the park. What does this mean?" And then all of a sudden I had to explain it to him. That was really, really tough. The worst thing was getting in the car and then going home. For the next 2 days, my seat covers were still wet because the water had literally just come out of my body into the seat and had just been completely absorbed like a sponge. It was horrible. I had to get towels down on it and everything. But my God, that was horrendous.
My story is not at all entertaining. In fact, it's actually a pretty horrible story in many ways. We played them at their place in 2011 between Christmas and New Year, Wednesday night. They beat us 1-0. I think it was a header from Ledley. You may remember that Lee Wallace. Lee Wallace actually scored after about 10 minutes. I wouldn't have had any idea because we had gone. It's actually for my Christmas present, so obviously I get the blame from all the rest of the family. Basically went to Ibrox. Nacho Nova was our guest. Got to meet him. Blue room, great. Okay, we're all jumping in the bus. Bus is absolutely bouncing before the game. Then we leave us where it was pitch dark, so I couldn't even describe where it was, but it was at least a half an hour walk. And my now wife's grandfather was with us, who was probably more staunch than all three of us put together and wouldn't take no for an answer. But we had to walk with him at his pace. Now he had bad hips at the time, still better than Kieran Tierney's, but bad all the same. So we hobbled there, got into the game after queuing. When we arrived about 20 minutes late before kickoff, queuing, the police then actually, in hindsight, doing a few drunk lads a favour and refusing entry, which I wish they'd done that with me. We then arrived. We are in the top tier, basically about 4, spitting distance essentially from them and the very front row. Now, if you remember that night, if you're at the game, you remember TV, when I say it rained, the rain wasn't even coming sideways. It was like swirling almost within the ground. You could actually see the rain and the floodlights. It was horrendous. If you recall, we didn't even really threaten that night.
No.
Jake actually should have been sent off for like the best yet worst, whatever your interpretation of his move was, 2-footed challenge where he's gone to do, can't remember who it was, but then has feigned injury himself, if you recall.
I remember it.
I think it was that Israeli player. What was his name? He's at Brighton, I think.
Oh, KL.
Kyle, yeah.
Then obviously they hammered us, and I just remember then having to walk the whole way back. No one really spoke on the bus. We then arrive at Ibrox in the pissing rain, still a lad, waiting for a bus, and then Govan Emerald, some gather up, arrive, get out of the bus to sort of celebrate. They obviously didn't have the balls to come close to us. I mean, you're talking women, children, all the rest. This should be funny, but it's not. The driver then helps one of them out of the bus in a wheelchair. He then starts to kind of start doing 360s, a guy pushing around the wheelchair. He then basically fell out of the wheelchair in front of us. Now, part of me, it was the most surreal thing. I'm on the phone to 999, just basically going in as calm a voice I can. Ibrox Stadium, Edmiston Drive, fucking get here, or something along those lines. The irony of all ironies, police arrive, basically help the bloke back into his wheelchair, haul them onto the bus, and then obviously when I remonstrated greatly, we're going to arrest us for breach of the peace.
Yep.
So to be fair to the club, and I have to say, and Ian Durant, they sent us free tickets for a Hibs game where we actually played really well and beat them. David Healy was still playing for us and did really look after us. But actually, on a serious point, if you recall when they won the league the year we went into administration, do you remember the stormed the front of our stadium and assaulted some of our staff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the same mob.
Oh yeah, they continue. If you remember last year, the Osijek stuff, they were involved in that as well. Particularly unpleasant bunch of people, and that brings me on actually to something that happened this week that I want to get your take on, guys. You may have seen on Twitter yesterday, for those of you who are on social media, but It's been reported in the paper since. Professor Adam Tompkins is a Conservative MSP, and he is a Rangers fan, quite openly about it. And he tweeted yesterday, "Great to be back at Ibrox today. Always good to see a team wearing green thumped 6-1. So, wee bit, kind of triumphalist. These teams won, taking the piss out of our rivals. Well, it was then jumped upon by masses and masses and masses of professionally mental people. I was going to say unstable, unbalanced. I'll read you one here from a Michael Hassan. His team won a football match. Referencing green brings the Catholic support of the teams he's referencing into the comments. Then using thumped is dangerous, as getting thumped in Glasgow can mean something else. In my mind, it's a silly, bigoted comment. And hundreds of them then posted disgusting comment from an elected politician who obviously revels in divisiveness rather than inclusivity. Hate to point out the obvious with his tweet, but typically and historically both teams in Scotland who wear green have Catholic backgrounds. This really is a sectarian tweet which could have real ramifications attached to it. It never ceases to amaze me how they get away with it. And people were genuinely reporting them to Police Scotland. Now, of course, James Dornan got involved in it, because if there's a bit of fuck-witted Twitterness going on, James Dornan, I think it's like a bat phone to him. What? Right, for in case anyone thinks, well, this is you're talking about politics here, we're really not, right? This is not a political, we're not jumping on a side here, we're not trying to be partisan in politics. Full disclosure, David is an elected councillor for the DUP in Northern Ireland, and is, I think, David, quite proudly right-wing in your views. Would that be accurate?
Certainly centre-right.
Right, well,
just for the record, by the time this makes the Daily Mail, and it's the Daily Record, and it says far right. I'll just I'll just close that off now.
I am left wing in my views, been a member of the Labour Party for 25 years, so I think that there were balanced cammies in the middle, not thinking that they're all fucking idiots, I think is fair to say. So this is not us jumping on a political strain or trying to whip anybody up. We're not. Whatever you believe in is what you believe in. None of us are sitting here ready to proselytise you. That's not what this pod's about. But what I think is interesting is that it shows to me what Rangers fans are up against, where people can, not ostensibly mental people, can see something like that and that's the conclusion that they jump to. And they don't even get the irony of it, David, that it's them who are bigots because they hate us so much. And what they do is this cowardly thing of wrapping their own hatred by trying to say, or to justify their own hatred by trying to say, we hate you because you're bigots. Well, firstly, there's an irony in that statement. And secondly, it isn't true. If you see something bigoted, then you're right to complain about it. Someone saying my team cuffed a team and I like that because it reminds me of cuffing our biggest rivals is not bigoted unless you are, and let's not be coy about this, a fuckwit.
Look, the issue is, and David, you and I have spoken to this plenty off air, where they have such a high moral high ground and such a high level of self-importance that they basically have two lists. It's basically legitimate political causes of which we will wrap ourselves in, and then basically bigots. And basically, if you don't come under the rent the cause of Catalonia, Palestine, independence in whatever country they want, then basically bigot, and they don't even want to engage in conversation. So it's almost, you say, the bat phone is right. I would almost sort of say it's like, it's the seagulls to the loaf of bread. They don't check if it's, wholemeal or thick cut. They just go get stuck into it. And that's almost the issue with these people now, that they just see something that is ever so slightly different to their little nuanced version of how the world should be, or how Scotland or Britain or whatever should be. And therefore, they just go after us. And as you actually rightly say, and again, not to kind of then go political, but the reality of it is, being Britishness is about celebrating our diversity, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of, it's the quote, about the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and ultimately, even as you kind of said, somewhat tongue in cheek, like our pod tonight highlights the differences across the Rangers support. And I'm not going to move into the everyone anyone campaign, which obviously we have spoken about. We have highlighted that it's great leadership from the club, and it's something we should all support. But actually, ironically, the most narrow-minded people that I can see as someone who obviously as a season ticket to Ibrox but doesn't actually live physically on the mainland, is the like of Dornan, where he straight away, and it summed up his comment where basically he basically said something along the lines of, "Oh, I see you're going to stand in the next election," to Adam Tompkins. Now, in all reality, the team that Adam Tompkins supports, even if you want to go down the line of, the vast majority of people who support Rangers support the union or are unionists, even you go down that line, what's the crime in supporting Rangers? And this is the problem, is they actually try to demonise the Rangers support and try to make us out to be some sort of Neanderthals, only driven by, and as you rightly say, David, their own bigotry and their own narrow-mindedness.
I think that's exactly it, Cammy. That what frustrates me is it's if you think this about us, and you clearly do, then you're taking a whole group of people, you're not treating them as individuals, and we saw that last week at Kilmarnock, the result of that, where you can demonise people because you have assigned them a viewpoint, and it's a very negative viewpoint, and therefore it justifies you being able to treat them in any way that you like, and it's pretty disgraceful.
It is, but you've seen this, the thinner end of this wedge when you saw the banners unfurled last week at Parkhead, and what you're starting to see now, and what I've been especially conscious of, is probably just dip checking their social media. As Celtic fans feel that when you use things like the F word to describe them, that is abhorrent, that you are not allowed to do that. But when they communicate to each other, they've prostituted that word so that they then feel that it's perfectly acceptable. And that, for me, is where you see the same thing when you want to go on the charge against politicians, especially in the west of Scotland, where what you're now saying is, we don't want to play by the same rules. That is the absolute ethos of any Celtic fan. I don't say any Celtic fan, let's go back to that,
a lot of them,
mental instability. You do have a lot of them who are quite sensible. I will, give them that. But they don't want to play by the same rules. They don't want to pretend that there aren't probably at least double figures of councillors or elected officials who have season tickets at Parkhead. They don't want to acknowledge that. James Dornan is a slightly different kettle of fish because everybody knows what team he supports. He has created things to hit the Rangers support with, which is what generates our dislike of him. Because fundamentally, if you go and attack us, we're going to defend ourselves. That's quite simple. But that was when the tide started to turn for him. No one cared who he supported. Like, genuinely, no one cares. I can't stick my head in the sand and say that if you work in the higher echelons of Glasgow City Council, that if you support Celtic, that is a crime. Because it's just, the laws of probability. It's going to happen, more so certainly in the Glasgow City Council. But I can accept it. Listen, do you know what? I can't accept it. The things I can't accept is where that then bleeds into a biased agenda against Rangers or provocative attacks against Rangers, the club, the fans, etc. And then you then take it from there. The Tompkins is perfectly entitled to go to a game, to have a season ticket, whatever club he wants, to mention the fact that he's there. That's it. But what's hilarious about this is that Celtic fans are so quick to jump on and use and brand a term that they don't fully understand. And that's because they don't want to be treated the same as other people. They want a different rule book, so they'll just generate it themselves. So, yes, we can't talk about their officials who are quite openly, Celtic fans, Celtic season ticket holders, etc. But as soon as one comes along and says, well, actually, I'm a Rangers fan, I enjoy doing this, you're not allowed to tweet or do anything on social media which indicates that. And what you've also got to remember is this is him having a laugh. See if he'd come out and said something purposely provocative or something that was over the line, I'm sorry, but the three of us would sit here just now and say you overstepped the mark. And that's another area where Celtic fans are incapable of doing this. They cannot see where the politicians will stoke the flames a little bit to be able to generate some passion or focus against a subject. And let's not forget, Tompkins is already a divisive figure for having the audacity to try and demand meetings with Peter Lawwell regarding obviously the Celtic Boys Club inquiries, which he's meeting with an absolute brick wall. So he's got every right to do what he wants to do, in the same way that James Dornan has every right to what he wants to do. However, if they overstep the mark, they've got to be held to accountability for that. Tompkins certainly hasn't, and it just makes you wonder what goes through the minds of these people to think of some of the replies which I've seen on that Twitter post. I mean, it is crazy. People saying that he should step down as a result of that tweet.
I know. It's the insanity that we come up against in Scotland.
David, just one point, and I have been. This is not plugging myself, because I assume I'm actually interested to see if any listener lives in my district for the council. But in every council piece of literature I have done, either prior to being elected and since being elected, I'm very proud, and it obviously sits in my hallway, the picture of Andy Halliday just in front of me and my wife, just a photo of me and Andy there, and I have had that picture, and I've spoken to, not name dropping here, but I made sure that he was aware that was going in and all the rest. And I've done that deliberately because I have been very clear about who I am when I've moved into, like, I'm a councillor. I'm not saying I'm in any way of, people should know me, but because I have gone on the view of, look, you should be not only proud of the team you support, but also you fight against that narrative of, you almost would think it's illegal to support our club. And I think that for me, the only way, and you're right in saying, Cammy, is to come out fighting. It's to stand up and say, look, this is who I am. This is who I'm proud to support. This is why I support our club. And if you've got a problem with it, that's not my fault. That's not my problem. That's your issue. And you can deal with that whatever way you see fit. And if you want to go on Twitter and hide behind a keyboard and say you should resign because of that, well, crack on. Because you're only making a fool of yourself and the cause that you propose to speak on behalf of.
100%. Okay, folks, that'll do us for this week. Just time to, of course, usher you over to our Patreon site. We've gone through 4,000 subscribers this week, which is remarkable. We continue to grow. And if you'd like to join the club, then please head to patreon.com/Heart and Hand, where for just $1.99 per month, you can sign up to hours and hours of wonderful Rangers content. You can also buy one of our new season ticket wallets. We've all got new season tickets. We need somewhere to put it. And where better than a Heart and Hand season ticket wallet? You just need to visit heartandhand.co.uk, go into our shop, and it's there for just the sum of £5. I mean, what can you get for a £5? Really, these days? Nothing. Well, a Heart and Hand season ticket wallet. Thanks to our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Paul Miles, and thanks to my two guests this evening. First of all, the splendid Mr. David Graham.
Cheers, David. Cheers, Cam. Cheers, listeners. It's been a pleasure.
And the wonderful Mr. Cammy Bell.
Thank you, boys. A pleasure as always. And David, I'm just going to listen to this back and just edit out myself and Edgar talking. Just listen to your voice.
It's £1 a minute.
You hope he was only listening. All right, folks. Thanks very much. We'll be back next week. Until then, have a great one. Bye bye.